such an interesting chapter to me because they go through the Red Sea and they have this unbelievable experience through that, and they have this time where they sing. They have a song of Moses, and then Miriam, which is Moses' sister. They have this worship service, and then immediately it says, it just goes into verse 22. And Moses brought Israel from the Red Sea, and they went out to the wilderness of Shur, and they got thirsty. So, and then of course y'all studied about the bitter waters last week, and so as we move into chapter 16, it's almost the same thing, except here we've got a situation where people are hungry. And Mark and I were joking kind of before the service started, and I said, it's their default to, when something goes wrong and when they're in a lack of something, it's their default to be able to go, why did you lead us out of Egypt in the middle of this desert where there is no water and where there is no food? And this is coming from the same people that just walked through the Red Sea, as we talked about the walls of water, and these guys having to be on the side running their hand through the water. It just an amazing thing that they saw, and not comprehending at all that God can provide water in the desert and that God can provide food in the desert while He's taking them through. So one question that I do have, and we're going to look at a map in just a second, so go ahead and get that map ready. Why the long route? Why does God lead? I guess, number one, why did God lead them the long route to the land of Canaan? Okay. Time to trust Him.
They also weren't ready to fight.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's what the scripture says. They weren't yet prepared to fight those nations militarily.
Yeah.
And that too.
Well, I'll hold off on that one. Anybody else? Okay.
Also needed to establish the nation and give them the law for the by just a whole lot of detail to establish them before they could go into the land.
They've got a lot to learn, don't they? I mean, they really do. Here you've got the birth of a nation. I mean, not the birth of a nation, but the birth of what they knew as a nation. And if you think about that, 40 years is a relatively short time to be able to go in and be this nation, to go in and take over. And that's what they did in the land of Canaan. They did this. So you can see the screen up here, and I all those answers are right, by the way. I can't imagine just taking everybody straight in over there. But here's something that is awesome in being able to look at. And I don't know, I've seen these maps, I've read the Bible, I've studied the Bible before, but it's never dawned on me that, and I knew they went the long way around, but it never registered with me that they didn't go into Canaan the way that they should have from Egypt. They went the long way around, and they came through the back door, actually. So it's not like they could have gone through the front door. So if you try not to fall here, I don't know that. I need a pointer. As we come down, they cross out of Egypt and they come down here, and they come. Remember what happened in Marah? Bitter water. That was in Marah, and then they go to Elam, and then they go down here, what's called Sin, and then down here at the bottom is Mount Sinai. We went over that Sunday morning with the Ten Commandments. That's what happens. Back up, and then they do this route, Kadesh Barnea, and then they go around the wilderness of Zin, and they get really, really, really close to Canaan. And this is when, you remember what else happens here? The spies. This is when they go and they send this group of guys, and then there were two that was like, ready, let's go. Let's go. We're ready to attack. And that was Joshua and Caleb. And they were both ready. They said, we're ready. No matter what they look like, we're ready. They trusted God. They knew that God could do it. Well, as it turned out, the rest of them weren't, and we'll get to that. So they make another U-turn, and they come all the way back down to where they were to begin with. And then decide that this is where we're back to this same place. So they left, and they went all the way up through Edom. They go up through Moab, and they go way up to the top, and they come in from this side. Now, they could have just gone straight across the wilderness of Shur and gone that way, but they didn't. God carried them all the way around for all these reasons that you would have loved it. So many things happen in the middle of this desert for God to be able to teach them who He was. Now, we know what happened. When they crossed over the Jordan River and they go into the land of Canaan, what happens? The first city that they conquer is Jericho. And they come into Jericho and they do exactly what God tells them to do, and they take care of business, don't they? It's because they trusted God to do what He said that He would do. The only time they get messed up is when they worship other gods and they don't trust God. And that's when they kind of get messed up. So tonight, this is one of those other things tonight. I don't know how far we'll be able to get, hopefully all of it. But tonight, as we look at this, they're in this other situation of where they are not trusting God, or not really. They'll trust God, but they need to be able to be heard first. We've got some that like to complain, and we need to let them complain, and then they take care of it. But verse 1 says in 16, and they journeyed from Elim, and all the congregation of the children of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, and which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day in the second month, and after they departed from the land of Egypt. So how many months have they been gone from Egypt? A couple of months now, right? So not going to get down into the days, but just a few months. And it says that the whole congregation of the children of Israel complained against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the children of Israel said to them, "Oh, that we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt. And when we sat by the pots of the meat, and when we ate bread to the full." Was it that good in Egypt? Do y'all remember it being that good in Egypt? I mean, they make it sound like it was a 5-star hotel. I mean, so it was so good. For you have brought us out in this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. This is just, I mean, seriously, somebody comes up and says this. Y'all know the type, right? Huh? You ever been around that guy, that girl? We're just going to starve to death. We're better off in slavery. And they'd heard it. Moses had heard it before, and he's hearing it now. And guess what? He's going to hear it again.
One commentator, because this is really the worst of these statements. They made statements like this before, but this time they're saying it would have been better if we would have been killed by Yahweh and still slaves to Pharaoh.
Yeah.
Rather than having been redeemed by the Lord and brought out of slavery into this desert. So it'd be better if we were still under slavery.
What a slap in the face.
To the Lord, absolutely.
What a slap in the face. Verse 4 says, Then the Lord said to Moses, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven. I would have said, Behold, I will now drop rocks out of the sky and take care of this bunch. And the people shall go out and gather a certain quota every day, that I may test them, whether they will walk in my law or not. So here they go. He's going to give them food, but he says he's going to give them food for a particular reason, and that reason is to test them. Yeah. So, verse 5 says, And it shall be on the 6th day that they shall prepare what they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. So what are they going to do here? Yeah. Yeah, right. So verse 6 says, Then Moses and Aaron said to all the children of Israel at evening, You shall know that the Lord has brought you out of the land of Egypt. How many times is he going to have to say this? But he says, You're going to know that the Lord has brought you out of the land of Egypt. And in the morning you shall see the glory of the Lord, for he hears your complaints against the Lord. But what are we that you complain against us? Also, Moses said, This shall be seen when the Lord gives you meat to eat in the evening, and in the morning bread to the full. For the Lord hears your complaints, which you make against who? Him. Moses, this is funny to me because Moses is like, You're complaining against me. Y'all's complaints are against me or to me, and you're not complaining against me. I'm doing what God told me to do to begin with. You are too. And he says your complaints need to be against him, and he hears them that way. Your complaints are not against us, but against the Lord. Then Moses spoke to Aaron, Say to all the congregation of the children of Israel, Come near before the Lord, for he has heard your complaints, and now now it came to pass, as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of the children of Israel, that they looked toward the wilderness, and behold, the glory of the Lord appeared in the cloud. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, I have heard the complaints of the children of Israel. Speak to them, saying, At twilight you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall be filled with the bread. And you shall know that I am the Lord your God. And he has said that too. So, verse 13. So it was that quails came up in the evening and covered the camp. And in the morning the dew lay all around the camp. And when the layer of dew lifted, there on the surface of the wilderness was a small round substance as fine as frost on the ground. So when the children of Israel saw it, they said to one another, What is it? For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, This is the bread which the Lord has given you to eat. This is the thing which the Lord has commanded. Let every man gather according to each one's need. Pay attention to what he's saying here. Gather, and I'm going to ask the question why was this the plan? Why do you think this was the plan? But gather it according to each one's need, 1 omer each person, according to the number of persons. Let every man take for those who are in his tent. And then the children of Israel did so and gathered some more and some less. So when they measured it by omers, he who gathered much had nothing left over, and he who gathered little had no lack. Every man had gathered according to each one's need. And Moses said, Let no one leave any of it until morning. Notwithstanding, they did not heed Moses, but some of them left part of it until morning, and it bred worms and stank. And Moses was angry with them, so they gathered it every morning, every man according to his need, and when the sun became hot, it melted. That's the most amazing thing to me is you got this ready-made. This was better than a microwave putting in something in the microwave, a hot pocket. I mean, this was it. You go outside and you look and it looks like dew, and then all of a sudden it grows into this manna that you eat, and whatever you gather, that's what he was telling them here to gather, and that was what it took to be able to feed everybody every day. And it's amazing. Everybody had enough. Nobody didn't have enough. But the problem was some of them were gathering more than what they were supposed to gather, and they were going to, or they were at least leaving some of it, and thought they may have a snack sometime later on, but it wound up getting eaten by worms pretty quick, wasn't it? And so it was on the 6th day that they gathered twice as much bread. Why did they do that? On the 6th day, which would have been what day? What day is the 6th day? Huh? What day is the 6th day? Friday. It's the day before the Sabbath. So why were they to pick twice as much on Friday as because they weren't supposed to get any of it, gather any of it. I say pick, but they were not supposed to gather any of it because of the Sabbath. They were, and well, I thought this stuff would ruin overnight. I thought it would ruin, right? But not on that day. Why? Because that's what God said. And it wouldn't register with them that if they would just listen to what God was saying, if they would just listen to what God was saying, He would take care of them. That's the reoccurring theme of what God was saying. Say it loud for those in the back. They're all teenagers. Yeah, they just wouldn't listen. But anyway, so on the 6th day, they gathered twice the amount of bread, 2 omers for each one, and all the rulers of the congregation told Moses, and then he said to them, "This is what the Lord said. Tomorrow is the Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Bake what you will bake today, and boil what you will boil, and lay it up for yourselves that all remains to be kept until morning." So they laid it up till morning, and as Moses commanded, and it did not stink, nor were there any worms in it. And then Moses says, "Eat that day, for today is a Sabbath to the Lord. Today you will not find it in the field. 6 days you shall gather, but on the seventh day, which is the Sabbath day, the Sabbath, there will be none." Now it happened that some of the people went out on the 7th day to gather. Do you believe that? Why would they do that? They already had it. They already had it, right? They gathered twice the amount. So why would they go out anyway on the Sabbath after being told not to do that to gather? They already had some. Well, that's possible. That's very possible. Or they could have eaten all of it, and that's teenagers too, right? Gina Lee. Yeah, padlocked the refrigerator. Now it happened that some of the people went out on the 7th day to gather. They found none. And the Lord said to Moses, "How long do you refuse to keep my commandments and my laws? See," the exclamation point there, I like that. "See, for the Lord has given you Sabbath. Therefore he gives you on the 6th day bread for 2 days. Let every man remain in his place. Let no man go out of his place on the 7th day." So the people rested on the 7th day. Now, if I'm Moses and God says, how long are they going to say? I would have probably, well, no, I wouldn't have done this. I wouldn't have been disrespectful to God. But in my mind, somewhere in the back of my mind, I would have said, look, it is not me. It's these people that you put me with. They won't listen. They won't do what you told them to do. Talk to them, because he just had that discussion with Aaron and the rest of them. He says, look, it is not me that y'all are mad at. And I would have wanted to say the same thing to God. It is not me that you're mad at. It's these people you put me with. They won't listen. Verse 31, and the house of Israel called its name manna, and it was like white. What is it? All right, so what is that? Some of you. I thought y'all might know what it was. They called it what? Manna. They called that manna. So it came up every day, every morning. It was there for them to be able to gather, except the Sabbath. And it was like a white coriander seed, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. So it's pretty good stuff. It was even sweet. Lisa said it was like macaroons. Y'all didn't hear that. Macaroons. But it was.
Are they limited to manna and quail, or are they also hunting and fishing and gathering other plants to go?
Well, I always took it, and I good question, but they're out in the middle of a desert. There's not much else out there. There were some videos that I was going to show tonight that they didn't really show exactly what I wanted to, and I looked for what seemed like hours and couldn't come up with one, but there's nothing out there. Nothing. So, manna, which no doubt was good. What does it say? It says there that it even tells you what it tastes like. It said, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. Honey grains. Yeah. So it had a sweet taste to it. We knew it. That's manna and quail, man. That's waffle fries.
We're probably missing the word in there. Somewhere.
That's very southern, isn't it? It's very southern. Then Moses said, this is the thing which the Lord has commanded. I like it how he always comes back. He doesn't say, this is what you do. He always comes back and he says, this is what the Lord commands. This is what the Lord commands. When you're teaching the Bible, when you're preaching the Bible, it is important, especially preaching, it's important for people to understand this is not what Mike Norton says. This is what God says. Your beef is not with me. That I've talked with people before, and they get sideways about something in the Bible. I'm like, look, it's not me. I didn't write it. I'm just reading it, teaching it. This is the thing which the Lord has commanded. Fill an omer with it to be kept for your generations, that they may see the bread with which I fed you in the wilderness. Wait a minute. Let's go ahead. I fed you in the wilderness when I brought you up out of the land of Egypt. And Moses said to Aaron, take a pot and put an omer of manna in it, and lay it up before the Lord to be kept for your generations. And the Lord commanded Moses So Aaron laid it up before the testimony to be kept, and the children of Israel ate manna 40 years. Until they came to an inhabited land, they ate manna until they came to the border of the land of Canaan. Now, an omer is 1/10 of an ephah. Y'all know how much an ephah is, right? Huh? You can Google it.
Kitty said about 2 quarts.
Oh, really?
Now switch translations.
So it's about an ephah is a,
It says in
It's
verse
2 quarts?
33, fill a jar with 2 quarts of manna.
okay. So what happens to this manna? And what happens to this quail? How long does it last that they save?
40 years.
It says for generations. Yeah, freeze dried. But it happened that way. Why? Because God said to do it that way.
Did they end up putting it in the Ark of the Covenant?
They did the manna.
Is that the jar that they filled to hang on to? It's in there.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
It's a good question
Put
for
it up to-
Aaron. Anyway, yeah. Y'all, I'm telling you, I've really enjoyed studying this. I texted, I'm not going to tell y'all what book and chapter that I texted, but it's way on over in it. I get into it and I can't put it down. But when you get into the end of Exodus and get into Leviticus and start reading some of the rules, it's crazy. It's not crazy, but it's kind of, it's really different from the way we live. And it was law. It was the law that God gave Moses. This is what you do. And it was every weird circumstance that may come up, he had an answer for it. He said, this is what you do in case this happens. But being able to go through that over the last, especially this week, I've really kind of gotten into the reading of this and studying this. What are there's 2 things, and I don't want to bring too much of this out now because I'm going to bring some of it out Sunday. But there's 2 things, and we talked about this some last Sunday. Sexual purity is one thing, and cleanliness is another thing. When you come before the Lord, you cannot come before God in an unclean way, in an unclean manner. I was texting Joel about some of it, and I said, my brother-in-law, I said, it's strange because everything that they do, it seems like they had to jump in a shower over and take a bath or clean their clothes because just whatever happened. That was what the ritual was, to be able to be part of it, to be able to be clean. And some of it was there were days that was involved that you could not come before the Lord or come to the Lord with a sacrifice or anything like that unless there were a certain amount of days that had come to pass. But they got all these rules and all this starts right here. So if you're not actively reading this through what we're studying in Sunday school and on Sunday morning for preaching, do so, because it's interesting stuff. At least it is for me. Gina probably gets tired of me texting her saying, "Look at this." Look.
One chapter you sent me this, I sent you back the emoji that's like.
It's stuff that you wouldn't think would be in the Bible. I'll say that. But very, very interesting things. So next week, as we look at next week, it's the water when they go, and of course they're moving around, and they come to Rephidim, and there's no water. But the thing with Mara is there was water there. It was just too bitter to drink. So God fixed the water where they were able to drink. But now they're out in the middle of nowhere, and there's not any water. Period. Next week. So we're going to look at that, and it's going to be one of the turning points. And it's like it's the water. And water and food that follows them. They're always able to get water in the middle of this desert, which is kind of weird in the middle of the desert. So again that it's God doing this.
I'm reminded of, remember the one year we went to Nicaragua, we had a huge group, like 30 something, and all the griping and complaining about the food and the coffee. Oh my goodness. Remember?
Yeah.
And so when we were reading this, I was just like, oh wow. You know, and it was meat and vegetables, but it was just different.
It was different.
Than what, but remember?
Oh, yeah.
Not
I remember.
everybody-
I felt like Moses.
I was not cut out to go for third world country.
That was, and I made the mistake and said this and made some people mad probably, but this is not a vacation. It's not a vacation. You have to understand.
Before you
You can't
go.
go somewhere like that and take your peanut butter and jelly sensibilities with
You can't.
But you can take a lot of Pop-Tarts, because that's
You
how I
can.
survive.
You can, but they break up. So sometimes you have to. sometimes you have to-
I took what I needed.
you. Now you got the mini bags.
We ate Pop-Tarts the way you do potato chips at the bottom of the bag. We turned them up and shook them out. But
I love it. I want some of that road chicken. I'd take anything.
Yeah, Mike did fine too, but he's not a picky eater. but
road chicken.
some of us are.
were you with us the year that we saw the lizards?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Guy out there out hunting with the machetes.
Yeah. Alberto said we were going up the mountain, and I don't. You never did see this, but he said, "You know what they're doing," and it's almost like he's kicked back and he's like, "Oh, you know what these guys are doing? They're out in the ditch, in the ditch, and with machetes." And I said, "I have no idea what they're doing. Are they cutting grass with machetes or what?" And he said, "No. He said they're hunting lizards." And I said, "What kind of lizards?" And he said, lizards. And I said, "What?" And he said, stop on side. So I stopped, and or whoever it was driving stopped. I can't remember if I was driving. I don't think I was driving then, but we stopped, and he called them, and they come walking up, and they had lizards. They were holding lizards in both hands, and they had their mouth. They had strings tied around their mouth, and where they couldn't bite you or anything.
Yeah, they sell them.
They sell them for food.
So they weren't killing them, they're keeping them alive.
They're keeping them alive. Yeah, and they would take them to market and they would sell them. So they were down in these holes. They were down in these holes on.
Guy holding two of them.
Yeah. So the lesson here is, in the middle of the desert, you'll eat whatever you need to eat, and
It must be good. There's a whole nation of people eating that stuff. Gotta be good.
Tastes like chicken.
yeah. So
With cilantro.
You get hungry enough.
you exactly.
You don't have Pop-Tarts.
If you don't have chicken sandwiches and waffle fries.
You remember those boys out on the beach catching the fish?
Yeah.
I remember they were doing it something different than just a fishing pole. Like they had a bat or something. Big old bat.
Yeah, I can't remember what they were doing either. It's a different way of life.
I ate rice and beans and Pop-Tarts the whole time we were
The only meat that I've eaten goat from down there, and the fish, they make the fish a little different down there. They catch this big fish. I don't remember what it is, but they cook it with the head on and everything. And it took me a little bit to get through that. But I think we must be the only country. We must be the only country that cuts the head off of a fish to eat it, because every other country leaves it on there. I just don't like it looking at me. But I did eat the first time I went down there. I went to a buffet in the middle of Managua, and Gina got on to me for going down there and eating. Like,
Buffets here are Germany enough. I mean, I've eaten off of them, but still, they're probably not the safest thing. And then he's eating off of a buffet in a third world country, which, you know,
My favorite one.
it's fun though.
It's good.
Never gets
Wipe their
sick.
nose like that and then grab a handle.
Yeah, that's good. That's always good.
all right, it's different. It's different than the United States for sure. But you know, and looking back at this, just thinking manna and quail, and how long did they eat? How long was that the menu? 40 years. I mean, I like chicken sandwiches from Chick-fil-A and waffle fries, but I just don't know. I'm almost on the same boat. I would need something else, and that may be another. That may be another.
And we think of food, and they probably did too back then, is a pleasure, and it is a pleasure. I love to eat. There are certain things I love, but you know, that's just sustenance. It's not,
Yeah.
our real focus is sharing the gospel, and you know, and it's just like anything else, we get caught up in all the stuff on the side like food.
Yeah, and lizards.
And lizards, yeah. You can survive on a lot less than what you have.
Yeah,
You know, you just don't
and again,
think you can.
I go back to the question that I asked when I started tonight is why God led them through. Why not something else? Why not lizards? You know, for a week or whatever, instead of just manna and quail. I can't answer that question, but what I can answer is that God wanted them to know that He was the provider. He was the provider, not
40 years was on them. They were supposed to eat it for 40 years, but they opted to stay there rather than go and fight. So the last 40 years.
Well, that's true.
You know,
That's true. At the point to where they were up on that top loop, I would have said, I'm ready for something else to eat. If that's the only reason to go in and try to get this place, that's the reason I'm going in. So yeah, good point. All right. Thank you for being here. Let's stand. We'll be dismissed. Oh, man. Who wants to dismiss us?